Recording live from Glory Hole Studios in Chicago and beyond. This is Cognitive Dissonance. Every episode we blast anyone who gets in our way. We bring critical thinking, skepticism, and irreverence to any topic that makes the news, makes it big, or makes us mad. It's skeptical, it's political, and there is no welcome mat. Today is the day you're listening to this. I don't know when.
We're recording it early. We have to record it early because I'm going to take a little break. The next couple
taking
weeks.
some time off.
Yeah, a little bit of time off. The next couple weeks we're looking at, so we recorded a couple things early, and in the past we may have done like news stories and stuff. This time we decided instead we recorded 2 long forms and an interview. So all that stuff should be relevant. The long form stuff normally holds for quite some time, so it'll still be relevant by the time you hear it. So there's 2 long form articles and 1 interview with Michael Marshall that's coming up in the next couple of weeks. We had to record ahead of time because I'm leaving and going to go on vacation. We had to hurry to get all this stuff fixed and ready to go. So we have to record a little early this week, which again is going to be weird because last week we recorded regular day. And we were talking about Iran, and by the time the show released, the Iran stuff had changed. The scope of the Iran stuff had already changed.
Yeah, so and it will probably, today we're recording this on a Tuesday, by the time this releases, who fucking knows, man?
Yeah.
Because it feels like every day, every 12 hours, something new and crazier seems to be happening. So, obviously we bombed Iran, so the United States got involved and bombed Iran, it looks like 3 sites, nuclear enrichment and nuclear, other than enrichment sites, like sites where nuclear work was being done purportedly to work toward a nuclear bomb. Trump came out and said that those sites were completely obliterated. And then later that same afternoon, his own advisors in the Pentagon were like, settle down, son. Completely obliterated is a little strong to severely damaged.
Feels a little strong. There's a guy walking out of there. He's got a big bag, like a bag with a money sign, except for it's got a radioactive sign on it. And he's walking his way out of there with a big bag of radioactive shit.
So I don't know about you, but I have been obsessively watching and reading this. I'm a crazy person when this stuff happens. So I have been an obsessive, I've been reading constantly. I've got a friend of mine that just joined the Marines recently. And so I'm worried about him, and I'm worried about his safety and, what this is going to mean for him and for his potential involvement and deployment and all that kind of stuff. So, I've been reading about this quite a lot. And one of the things that I read too is that this best case scenario, this sets back the nuclear program of Iran between 2 and 5 years.
Yeah. 5 years I heard was the top end. Yeah.
And it's the message, I have to think that if I'm Iran and if I'm really any other nation in the world, right? The message that this sends to me is nothing has ever actually been more urgent than building a nuclear bomb. This actually steps up the urgency for existentialism for those nations to have a bomb, right? Because what we are not doing is bombing North Korea, right? There's no military involvement that is ever going to happen now with North Korea. They have effectively rendered themselves safe from the kind of, random attacks that Israel and the United States have inflicted upon Iran. So if you're Iran, the message is, well, we got to be more secretive and move faster.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, then at any time we can be overwhelmed by these other forces. And if we're overwhelmed by these other forces, they could force regime change. They can, they could do whatever they want. They can effectively control our airspace. We are sending exactly the wrong message. And I think it's really worth saying too, that we had a deal in place.
Yeah, that's we had a
good deal in place.
Yeah. And
that deal, Trump's first thing he did was to toss that fucking deal out in his first administration. And then the Iranians are like, all right, well, then we can't bargain with these guys in good faith because every 4 years or whatever, the next guy might throw that shit out like he just did. And then Trump came back in and said, well, let's make a new deal, which was effectively he's trying to negotiate the old deal But now on bad faith terms, he just wanted his name on it instead of Obama's name on it. And the Iranians were reluctant to trust that because of course they were. And meantime, Israel's like, yeah, all right, well, Iran's been weakened and now's our chance. And we're a weak power, or a strong power in the area. So we'll force the hand of a weak leader and we'll attack, with the weak leader being Trump. And now we find ourselves here in a position where, like, I think we've greatly destabilized the region. That's my feeling on it strongly, is I think we have greatly destabilized that region.
Yeah, I don't think that that's incorrect at all. I think if you look at what you suggest, which is a deal that was on the table that made it so that there was economic incentives for that group of people, for that country to re-enter places where they were forbidden from entering for years and years and years, and they have an opportunity to sell products and get some economic stability. And instead, what we did was we came in and we pulled the rug out from underneath them because, like you suggest, Trump couldn't live with the fact that someone else did something that he didn't get any credit for.
Yep.
You know, he doesn't think about this in the long term in the sense that, like, he maintained the deal and that's good, right? He doesn't think about it like that. He thinks about it like, if I didn't do it, then it's not good at all. There's nothing good about it. And I think that that's the problem with having somebody who's so narcissistic and so short-sighted and so just generally dim, that he doesn't understand that there's important things in place and gears in place, that even if you're just a cog in that machine, you did something really important. And he doesn't recognize that. He's like, I got to be the lever. I'm the fucking lever every time.
Man.
And if I'm not the lever, then fuck this thing. I will burn it all down. And he's done that for a bunch of stuff since he's been in and out of politics since 2016. So you're absolutely right. This could have been changed totally if he would have planned to keep that deal, because, you know, Biden would have kept it, and we might be in a totally different spot right now. But instead, during Trump's term, they could become a nuclear nation. During Trump's term, because you said 2 to 5 years, right? Well, 2 years on the low end, 3 years, 4 years?
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty much before the next person takes over. It could be a nuclear Iran. So you're in a bad spot with that. And then you get the behind the scenes. There's like a 10-page article in the notes that we'll link. And this article is called How Trump Shifted on Iran Under Pressure from Israel. It's like 20 pages long, but the gist of it is, and this happens sort of like near the last third of the article, they start talking about why he did what he did. And why he did what he did was essentially he didn't want Netanyahu to get any kind of press over this. So what he wanted to do was bump Netanyahu to say, I did it. I did this thing. I did this thing. We saw this in his first term when he walked out with the other leaders. It was either at UN or was it G8 or something like that. And he grabbed that guy by the fucking shoulder and he pulled him back so he could walk out and fluff himself up and stand there and look around. He grabbed that dude by the shoulder so he could be the first one out. Yeah. We knew that was his mindset back then. Think about this. Once you know this about him, how easy is it to get him to do what you want? Do you think that Netanyahu cares? No, I don't think he cares. He's happy Trump did what he did. He's fucking excited about that. Yeah.
There is nothing easier than forcing the hand of a weak man.
Yeah.
Right? Like forcing the hand of somebody who has a low self-esteem narcissism problem like Trump has. He's the easiest guy to manipulate. We've seen it time and time and time again, because exactly like this article and you suggested, like, you know, you've got Netanyahu, who's a very strong leader, who understands that a weak leader is an easy person to manipulate. The way that you manipulate him is you make sure that, like, you give him a chance to take credit. You give him a chance to pound his chest and be the big man, because all he cares about is a demonstration of power. It's a performative power thing. So if I, all of a sudden, as the sort of subordinate, as the beta, right, the subordinate, if I, as the subordinate nation, am taking a lead role in solving a problem that you were working on solving, you have to step in front of me or your ego is damaged.
Yeah.
Now, a bigger man wouldn't care. A bigger man would say like, well, look, I don't think that that's actually the right way to do this. We've got other solutions in place. But like Trump has always had that like Reagan-esque peace through strength bullshit, that like he's said it out loud and then people have like, so he has backed himself into a corner by this machismo nonsense that he projects. So if somebody else that's one of our allies that is a subordinate ally is going to use force to solve a problem that we were working on with diplomacy, it forces the weak man's hand. It makes him do it. And Netanyahu fucking knows it.
Yeah.
He knows it. He is playing Trump because Trump is easy to play. All of these strongman dictators, they know this is the easiest guy to fucking manipulate.
Sure.
There's nobody easier to manipulate than this fucking bitch. He's a little bitch. So he's easy to anticipate. All you got to do is like back him into a corner because you know that he doesn't know how to not fight.
Yeah.
And if a guy doesn't have anything in his toolbox other than this, then you know what tool he's going to pull out. And then it's easy.
And I think one of the things that people seem to be misinterpreting and misunderstanding from how these things normally play out is that they seem to think that, there's a sort of a fracture. I don't know if you saw this, but there's a fracture on the right now between anti-war people who are saying we don't want to get in these forever wars. Let's stop meddling in these places across the globe, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have this other group of people who are Trump ride or die. Doesn't matter what Trump does.
Yep.
We're ride or die Trump. So if Trump decides to 180 from his campaign promises, literally doesn't matter. I will glob his shit on my face if you give me the opportunity to do it. I'll fucking bathe in his sweat if you let me. And so these people are all like right now on the train that says he's doing the right thing. He decided this. This is MAGA. If you don't like it, get the fuck out, essentially, is what they're saying. Great. Keep saying that. Fracture the fuck out of your base. Do it. Fucking say it all day and all night. In fact, if you're a leftist, go pretend to be that and go do that, right? Go do that all day. Do that constantly. Don't stop doing it. Make these people hate each other because they already hate each other. The only coalition that keeps them there, only glue is the gorilla glue that is Trump, right? Well, in any case, what they don't understand, and what those people that are war hawks now that probably weren't while he was on the campaign trail, what they don't understand is that no matter what happens now, he signs it. Let's say he signs a ceasefire deal today. We're recording this. There's currently a conflict. Let's say he signs a ceasefire deal today. He's already declared there was a ceasefire.
He just said there was a ceasefire.
He just said there was.
Iran and Israel were like, wait, what?
And they're like, were you going to invite us or no? And then so he's already said there was, but there isn't. There might be by the end of the day. Who the fuck knows, right? We could be refreshing our app and by the end of the day, see that there's a ceasefire. But just like what he did with the trade, just like what he did with this, there are harms that are created. Even if you fix a problem afterwards, there are harms that are created. There are factions that you enraged, and now you have to deal with that stuff. And you have, in our case, a guy who's a young man who's now in charge of like terrorism in this country. He's like a 22-year-old fucking stock boy that they hired who's in charge of terrorist activities in the country. You've gutted all of the systems in the United States that were here to sort of protect us in many ways. You gutted all our soft power all across the globe. And now you're like, well, now we just did a bunch of moves. And now we don't have anything anywhere to counteract it, either here or there. And so you've essentially gutted our defenses and then opened us up for attack. And so people don't get, they think, oh, well, he fixed it. It's like, dude, it's not fixed. It's not close to fixed. I don't care what they sign on there. That doesn't stop factions. That doesn't stop them from funding things that can really damage us, from creating terrorist attacks here in the United States. It doesn't stop that. It doesn't prevent that. What prevented that was that economic deal because everybody's like, hey, man, don't fuck this up. This is good for us. Yeah. Instead, now you fucking used force and now you get to fucking eat what they give you.
Yeah, man. And like, keep in mind, everybody, too, that like a ceasefire isn't a victory. It's just returning to the normalcy of not being at war.
Yep.
Like,
you're absolutely right.
It's not like there was like a war that was raging on for decades and decades and he brokered a ceasefire. Like, if there's a ceasefire, and I think actually one was literally just declared while we were talking right now. I just glanced over at my app. That's funny. But like, if there's a ceasefire, all that does is go back in time 2 weeks to the thing we already had.
Yep.
Right? That's nothing. You got nothing. This motherfucker needs to break and reset everything rather than just keep the things that work on cruise control. There were things that were working. All he had to do was keep them on cruise control. And he's so stupid, he would have been able to take credit for them. We had a great deal with Iran, a great deal. We had the International Atomic Energy Agency coming in and doing inspections and saying like, yes, there is no, like everything is happening the way they are saying that it was supposed to happen. In exchange, Iran got, economic, an easing of economic sanctions, and there were some security guarantees built in there for them as well, right? So there's a reason for them to do this. Trump goes in and breaks it. All he had to do was keep it. The economy's the same way. The economy was humming along. Trump comes in and breaks it. If he fixes it, that's a ceasefire.
Yeah.
All you did was go back to the thing that wasn't broken.
Yeah.
But we're so stupid, Cecil. This is the thing that makes me crazy. We are so stupid that what we remember is the valley we were in and the fact that we've climbed out of it. We don't remember that the dates on the prior valley, right? It's like, I remember like Obama got no end of shit for the 2008 mortgage crisis. No end of shit, even though he took power in 2009. George W. Bush presided over the 2000. That's how dates work, man.
Yeah.
But like Obama got so much shit for that crisis. Oh, Obama bailed out the banks. George W. Bush bailed out a lot of the banks first. George W. Bush presided over the problem, right? The problem occurred under W, and then Obama came. We do this all the time. We do it all the time. We did it for COVID. We did it for we do it for inflation. We did it for the housing crisis. We will do it for this as well. We will remember the ceasefire and not the fact that we didn't have to have a fire. Right? It's like, I'm not a hero if I like set my kitchen on fire and then like run around with a fire extinguisher and put it out.
Yeah.
I'm not a fucking hero, man. Yeah. I could have just not set the kitchen on fire. That was always an option.
One of the things too that you mentioned early was we're not even sure that what we did was useful, right? We're not even sure that this show of force that we created did a thing that prevented something from happening down the road. It may be that they moved their stockpiles before we got there and dropped bombs on them. It's
what all the evidence seems to show. Yeah.
It's a possibility, right? We have the satellite picture, like I said earlier, the guy with the big bag of uranium walking, creeping across the desert very quietly. But, we don't know. And the other thing you have to remember, too, is since this regime has come into power, we have seen absolute total fuck-ups in the intelligence community. I mean, like the signal gate thing, all that stuff has been a horror. He's literally not listening to Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard says, hey, she's the national security. And he's like, yeah, I don't believe her. I don't believe the national intelligence director. I don't believe that person. And I'm going to go do this anyway. But think about this. Are people going to share any of the secrets with us while there's still a chance that we can out the people who shared the secrets with us? If they do, they're not going to, it's going to be a day late and a dollar short every single time. We're not going to get the best security because they're going to be afraid we're going to out their fucking agents. So we're going to have this constant chasing of the tail because we've proven on the world stage that we're bumbling. And so now they're not going to share the top data with us because they're afraid. And so you're chasing this very, very secretive thing they're doing in Iran with a team of people who should be on a boat somewhere getting hammered. They should be doing, like, the people who are on his staff should just be like, when you poke a hole in a can,
shotgunning beers,
and then you open it, and then you drink the whole thing. Like, tell me there is anything better. Like, is there anything Hegseth is qualified for? He's qualified for that. I guarantee that man could shotgun a beer better than anybody you ever met in your life. I guarantee it.
I think Hegseth should be the U.S. secretary in charge of keg stands.
Yeah, U.S. secretary started Trump parades. Like that should be that guy.
Yes.
Like that's your job, and he'd be fucking spectacular at
He'd
it,
be
dude.
so good at it.
He'd have a whole flotilla of fucking dipshits doing cannonballs and drinking fucking shotgun and beers. He'd have a great time. Everyone would be safe again. It'd be perfect.
He's going to get the Keystone Light to the city, you know, like, like two other things is like, like officials from the White House have come out on news programs where they were being interviewed, where they were basically like the reporters from, I think it was PBS, like Meet the Press or something similar, were like, hey, the intelligence actually shows that they weren't working toward a bomb. And the White House official was like, yeah, we don't care about the intelligence. Just straight out said, we don't care about that.
Hey, we don't care about it. And we said that out loud. You can quote us.
Imagine saying out loud, we don't care about intelligence.
Dude.
Has there ever been anything that has defined the Trump era more than we don't care about intelligence?
Did you see this?
We get it.
Did you see this morning him drop an F-bomb on camera?
No, wait, what?
Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm going to play it for everybody.
Oh, I
have it queued up, Tom. Here's Trump getting questioned this morning out on the lawn. He's got his fucking helicopter. He's getting ready to fly off. So here he is.
God, he's got terrible hair.
Do you believe that Iran is still committed to peace?
Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too.
Are you questioning if Israel is committed?
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I'd never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
Jesus Christ, he's a fucking he's everybody's angry uncle. This is like what we have hired here is like we've hired your angry political uncle from Thanksgiving to be in charge, who also doesn't really follow the news very well.
Yeah.
That's what we've done.
And what that shows me as a leader across the world is I know how to make him angry.
Yeah.
And I got everything I need.
Dude, that's so true.
I got everything I need, man. What other president would look across somebody and say, they know what the fuck they're doing and march away?
Yeah.
What other president in recent memory would do something like that?
Never.
Yeah, and you know what I hate is I saw this story, watched him say it, and then I went to look at it in the New York Times and they used expletive. They put expletive there. They didn't quote it. And I'm like, it's not like you got a fucking fourth grader reading the New York Times.
Yeah, I know, right?
You know, these are adults. They can handle a fuck. You can say fuck. It's okay. And
that's how we all got here.
We should know what he said and how easy that person is going to be to manipulate in the future. You know, it's just, he has no, like, you know, he always talks about cards, Tom. You know, he's always like, yeah, got your cards. You don't have any cards. You're holding your card. He doesn't have, he fucking plays his hand open so the world can see it.
And that's a really, really good point. Like, shouldn't a good leader appear at all times to be unflappable?
Yeah, completely.
Even if you feel entirely flapped, right? Like, even if I remember, and I don't want to put myself out there as the world's greatest leader, but like in my day job, I remember when COVID hit. When COVID hit, it was my job, my responsibility, without any corporate guidance, to figure out what to do with my 12,000 square foot office and my 80 some people that worked for me, and how we were going to, whether we were going to send everybody home, whether we were going to try to keep them in the office, how we were going to send people home if we sent people home. And like, I remember thinking like, man, I'm pretty nervous about all this. I was nervous about making the wrong decisions.
Sure.
I was nervous about like the health and well-being of the people that were in my care. But I'll tell you what, like I walked around that office and I had a lot of people afterwards really come and be like, I really appreciate you keeping everybody calm, keeping everything, because like that's your job. Yep. So inside I was like a ball of like, oh my God, I've got all these things, and that was nothing. Like that's nothing compared to being president. That is literally nothing. It's inconsequential. you should be unflappable.
Completely.
The other thing I want to point out that this does, and I think this is a bigger deal, and I'm not seeing any writing about this. So the nuclear enrichment facility that we were primarily interested in taking out, as I understand it from the reading, was the nuclear facility that was located in a mountain in a place called Fordo, or Fordow. I may be mispronouncing it. And that thing was like fortified and in a mountain and buried deep, and it was a whole thing. And we were the only country that had these bunker busting bombs, these GBU bombs, right? That fly with, and only a B-2 can carry them, and they weigh 30,000 pounds, and they're made specifically to do this work. They were developed to actually penetrate bunkers in hidden places within Afghanistan. That's why they were developed. This is the first time they were ever used in war. And this, I think, is a big deal. What we showed the world is that they only kind of work.
Yeah.
By using these weapons, when these weapons are not
terrible,
used,
you're right.
Right? When we don't use these weapons, everybody thinks, man, the United States has these weapons and maybe they can get to us. Maybe we don't know the exact technical capabilities of these weapons. But as soon as a weapon hits the war theater, right? As soon as it comes into play, it's analyzed, it's understood, its limitations are known. Now you know how to counteract that weapon.
Yeah.
When it's not used, you don't know how to counter that weapon. By using this weapon for the first time, what you have taught the world is how deep to dig.
Yeah.
That's what you taught the world. We dropped, as I understand it, and again, just reading, the news sources I read, so I don't want to say this is like, I think fucking Pete Hegseth didn't signal me on this.
Yeah.
But like, we dropped about a dozen of these things. And we may or may not have gotten deep enough in Fordo to actually make the difference, right? Yeah. So we've told the world exactly how to do this next time. Yep. And I think that's a big deal.
You're right.
I think like that's showing your cards.
Yeah, man.
Like that's not just showing your cards. That's strip poker and taking your dick out first.
Dude, and that's what this administration has been doing since the beginning. They have no chill. They have no way to, they're just bad at it. And they've proven that they're bad at it, and they've proven that they can't hire people that are, all the people that they hire are Nepo babies, or they've sort of lucked their way into this administration. And the people who got them there, I want to play another clip for you, Tom. This is please. From Theo Vaughn. And I want to play this clip because he has a Democratic congressperson on and they're talking about this war. But what I want you to pay more attention to is I want you to pay attention to Theo Vaughn. I want you to pay attention to a guy who's got a massive podcast audience and who influenced tons of people because he had Trump on his podcast this last time around, just like Joe Rogan. So I want to play this clip for you so you could see sort of this guy, and this is what people are listening to. So he's got Ro Khanna on. This is a congressperson. So here we go.
But I think, do you know anyone, Theo, in your life who's like, yeah, we should go out and go to war with Iran? Like any of the folks you talk to?
Nobody. Nobody, even like hardhead, like even guys who like former Navy SEAL, no, none of them. Nobody is saying yes. And I felt like the biggest thing there's so many things right now, and it's like that I feel like in the world that are kind of stressing people and making people nervous. But one of the things is I felt like it was supposed to be America first. Like we're focusing on like, what are we doing to get things back into America, right?
Exactly.
To like increase like the purpose of being an American, to refill like our hearts with blood and like and make us feel something again here and make us be excited about being an American, right?
Yeah.
And I felt like that was what a lot of the energy was for. And then now that we're caught up here and it feels like we are just working for Israel, I think to a lot of people it's, I don't know, you just really start to feel very disillusioned pretty quickly. And I don't mean disillusioned in people. I don't mean disillusioned in like the human beings, but this disillusioned in our leaders, right? You start to feel like,
what would you say the heart does, Tom? If you're gonna guess, I know you're not a doctor. What would you say the heart does? Like,
I'm no cardiologist, but I think that's the blood pump, you stupid shithead. This guy is a thought leader. Yeah. Think about that.
Yeah, I'm not kidding when I say this is a guy who helped elect the president, right?
Yeah. This is like, did you read, there's a Malcolm Gladwell book. I forgot the name of it because I forget shit, but like, he talks about like the idea of like mavens.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do remember this. I don't remember the name of the book though.
And the idea there is that there are some people, and it was an idea that resonates with me because there are people in my life that this clicked with. I don't know if there's any juice behind it or not, but broadly, the idea is that there are people out there who, for one reason or another, seem to do a particularly good job of surrounding themselves with others, of connecting disparate people, of building these sort of like communities, right? And that's what these mavens are. And I think I look at this guy and I'm like, all right, undeniably, just based on the numbers, this guy is a maven, right? That's what this guy is. This guy is a person who has, for whatever reason, created some kind of a community around, if not his thoughts, but he's created a community around thoughts that he is like interested in megaphoning, right? Interested in broadcasting.
The idea, I think, comes from the book Blink.
Okay. All right. That sounds right. Okay. So thank you. So I think about that and I think like, all right, so you've got a responsibility then as a maven, right? It's the Joe Rogan problem. You've got a responsibility.
Yeah. You got a big fucking microphone, man.
And the bigger your microphone gets, the more you are responsible. And there are trade-offs for that responsibility, right? That would be a really unfair position to take if there were not trade-offs for it. But there are trade-offs for it. You get a bunch of money, right? So you accept this responsibility in exchange for remuneration, right? And in exchange for the ability to use a bullhorn or a megaphone. None of this happens by accident.
Massive amounts of fame, right? Like that's another thing too, is like these people are popular and that fame also wields more money.
Yeah. And this is all stuff you have to ask for and work for, right?
Yeah.
So it's also okay to say like you have a responsibility for the thing you raised your hand and said, please let me do this. So he's got a responsibility. But all of these guys seem to shirk that responsibility when it comes time to like contend with the results of what they have done.
Yeah.
And this Theo guy is exactly, he's like, I'm really disillusioned, not in the people, but in the leaders. First of all, the leaders are people.
Yeah.
So that's a weird thing to say. Like they're not
super
robots.
Important to point out to Theo. Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, big guy. But like also like none of this, if you were paying attention, is a surprise.
Sure.
So that leads me to think that you were either not paying attention on purpose or you were because it didn't sell, right? Because paying attention shifts you to the center or shifts you to the left from your right wing, and that doesn't sell. I think what's happened with a lot of these people, Cecil, is they saw the money on the right.
Yeah.
They shilled for the money on the right. Then the fucking consequences of their own actions start to come to fruition. And this puts them in an uncomfortable spot, right? It puts them in an impossible position to maintain any kind of integrity or any kind of non-hypocrisy because the right has become a wellspring of hypocrisy. And I think they all thought like, well, if he just sets this shit on cruise control, then we get to be on the right and rake in the money, and then nothing gets damaged, and then we take all the credit. And that's not what's happening because Trump needs to reset everything, break everything in order to be the guy that fixes it.
What I think these people also do is they are manipulated by their audience in a way that is easy to see, right? Because these guys, they will have a big show and they will see that if they say something that goes against the grain, they will get a lot of kickback and a lot of pushback.
Yeah.
And so they don't want to do it. Well, I'm reminded of when we first started out, we were doing some edgy stuff. We were doing some anti-God stuff. And we had a pretty big following that was really anxious for us to do some anti-God stuff. But the moment we started talking about politics, they got mad.
Yeah.
And they would send us messages and be like, don't talk about politics. Talk about anti-God stuff. You guys are funny when you do that. When you talk about this other stuff, you don't know what you're talking about, is what they would say. Because they were on the right and they didn't want to have to hear what we had to say. And what we told them was, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
It's our show. We're going to talk about what we want. And you're also stupid. Like you're also a dumb person. And you don't know what you want. What you want is you want to be angry, you want to be mean, and you want to not ever face any consequences for those things.
Yep.
And we're saying you can't do that. That's not how things should shake out. That's not how they shouldn't deal out that way. And there was a while there where we were fielding a bunch of these messages and then they just stopped because they stopped listening.
Those people are gone, yeah.
They said, I'm done. I'm not going to do it anymore. Now, we could have, if we wanted to, could have become fucking one of those YouTube guys who's just really shitty and mean and angry and on the far right.
I don't know if we'd be good at it.
Yeah. Look, it's not hard.
We'd be good at it, yeah.
Here's the thing. Those people aren't smart. It's not hard. It's a real easy game. You could have made, like, think about the unscrupulous people that were making tons of money off Russia. Those people are unscrupulous and not all that smart. They made a ton of money because all they had to do was puppet some Russian talking points. Same thing here. All you have to do is puppet a few anti-God talking points, and you can have this giant swarm of people who, if you make fun of trans people, they'll be your friend. And so it's a real easy thing to do. And I think the thing is that these people have got this modicum of success, and then they look back and they say, well, I don't want to piss that up. I don't want to upturn this apple cart. Things are going pretty well for me. So they're pushing me towards Trump. Well, I guess I should just endorse Trump, because if they're all pushing me that way and I don't hear any voices on the other side, I know what the major bulk of my audience wants me to do, and so I'll do it. Instead of being who I am, I'm going to be who they want me to be.
That's exactly, dude, it's like the maven meets the temperature taker. Yeah. You know, they're constantly, these are mavens who are constantly taking the temperature of the largest audience as they reach it in order to say the things that the bulk of those people want to hear and repeat it back to them. And it's echo chamber shit.
Yeah,
right?
it's all it is.
It's fucking echo chamber shit. And like now these assholes are in a spot, like on this issue, for example, where maybe they do actually have a principle. Maybe they do actually have a viewpoint. Maybe they've said things that now it's impossible for them to back down against. The thing is, like, Trump is unlike everybody else. For everybody else, the things that we say, we are held to. For everybody else, when we espouse a view and a viewpoint, we are clear and we are emphatic and we say, this is the side of this issue I fall on. Trump falls on no sides of any issue. It's a whole thing. We've talked about it a bunch. It's a whole thing, right? He's an anti-war president. He's an anti-Middle East interventionist president who just dropped bombs in Iran.
Yeah.
And is still trying to paint himself as an anti-interventionist president, right? He is always going to try to have everything both ways. It's just that the circle that orbits that, and we've seen it, they only get burned.
Yeah.
Because everybody holds those guys accountable to who they are, what they say, and what principles they espouse.
Just please stop. Just relax.
That's enough. Party's over. Let the Virgin get back to work.
All right, this story comes from, we fucking called it, thehill.com. Trump on Juneteenth. U.S. has too many non-working holidays. Now, Trump didn't specifically single out Juneteenth when on Juneteenth, he called out there being too many holidays that are non-working holidays on Juneteenth and sent out no message of support, none whatsoever, for the actual celebration of liberation of enslaved people.
You don't need a giant magnifying glass and a pipe to figure this out.
You so fucking don't, man. You so fucking don't.
It's so funny, too, because right afterwards, he probably went golfing, right? You know, here's a guy who's complaining about how much people don't work. We work in the United States. We kill ourselves with work. The amount of work we do in the United States, other places around the globe look at us and they're like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you doing this to yourself? You shouldn't have to do this to yourself. You should have a better understanding of how little life you actually are given. And you should do more that is not just sitting in front of a computer and doing work for somebody else. What we do in this country is we work ourselves to nubs for someone else. And that happens every day. And once in a while, the government will say, hey, you can take a short break. And even still, they're like, no, we want to pull some of that away. Let's grab some more of that away. There's nobody clamoring. The only people clamoring that people are off that day are rich fucking people. That's only people. That's the only people that are pissed off. And that's the only people that Trump listens to. So that should tell you everything you need to know about who's talking to Trump and who he's listening to. He never gave a fuck about you. You were one vote. That's what you were to him. You were a single fucking vote. And he never cared about you, not for a second.
Yeah, man. And like, we don't get a lot of, like, to your point, we don't get a lot of time off. That's a misnomer. And like, not everybody even gets the time off that are the federal holidays. There are 11 federal holidays. I get 6 of them. That's how many we get. We don't get all of them. In my company, we get 6 of those, 7. I'm sorry, we get 7 because now we get Juneteenth. We didn't get Juneteenth when it first started. So like, just because there's a federal holiday doesn't mandate that everybody gets that day off.
Yeah. And
That's
even
not how that
still,
works.
let's presume you do. That still is only 11 3-day weekends. That's not even one a month.
Yeah, it's not. It's and like a lot of those aren't even like going to be on weekends either. That's the other thing. It's like a lot of them are just so like if you work in any service industry, if you work in any retail, it's not like those places are closed. You know, like you can go to every store, you can get a haircut.
Sorry, you can't buy Levi's. It's President's Day.
Yeah, get the fuck out of here. So like we already for most people don't get that time off.
Yeah.
And a lot of time off in America, if you get it, isn't paid either.
Yeah.
So this is just a way to shit on a holiday because it's not a white-centered holiday.
Exactly.
That's what this is. This is a white supremacist saying, we're canceling this next year.
Yeah.
Wait for him to cancel. Hey, everybody. Well, all you fucking working stiffs who are like, he's for the working man. Wait till he cancels one of your days off.
One of the things I saw about this was that, you know, and I think it was a tweet, someone had said, man, you sure do hear about the Republicans freeing the slaves. They said they never stop talking about that, but they don't want to celebrate Juneteenth.
They don't.
That's for sure.
Kind of weird, right? Kind of weird. Yeah, like what's the clearly the thing is like we're in an environment where any references to race, to history, to diversity, all of those things are being out loud destroyed from our national conversation. They are being actively removed. They are being hunted down like the fucking most dangerous game, man. It is a horror. It is an absolute revisionist horror that is happening right now. All of it designed specifically to appease the fragile sensitivity of white people.
Yep.
That's what's happening.
Yep.
And when you lose Juneteenth, which you will lose Juneteenth, like when you lose Juneteenth as a holiday, that is a racist action. That's just what that is. He's not getting rid of President's Day, man.
Dark. I like the dark. I love the dark. But I hate nature. I hate nature. Wait a sec! Oh! Stop! I'm just a kid!
All right, this story comes from the Huffington Post. Conservatives turn on GOP senator over plans to sell off millions of acres of public land. So the right has been talking about this for a long time as a way to solve the housing crisis, as a way to create more homes and to solve the problem of undersupply in the housing sector. And this is the biggest fucking nonsensical bullshit talking point. Nobody's ever lied to you. Well, I don't want to say that. This is just one of the many huge fucking lies.
There's so much fucking land that you can fucking build houses on. Get the fuck out of here with that.
Yeah, and like you've also got to recognize too that most of this federal land exists in places where there is no infrastructure to get to it, right? So you're not building houses in the middle of the fucking Shawnee National Forest. That's not a thing, right? What you're doing is selling it to loggers. What you're doing is selling it to mining companies. What you're doing is selling it to big business who will strip mine that shit down to its fucking nubs for natural resources. This has never had anything to do with housing. To build housing, you have to have housing that has roads, that has sewage and water infrastructure, that has communications and electrical infrastructure, or is at least adjacent or close enough that you can bring those things in. And then that community also has to have access to schools or build them. It has to have access to shopping, to food. There's a lot of stuff that goes into building housing. You don't just build housing in mass in the middle of a fucking forest, like it's not near anything, and being like, well, guys, we solved the housing crisis. That's not the intention. Everybody that understands anything understands those truths, right? So the goal here is not to use any of this land in substance, in volume, to build housing. That's not how we solve the housing crisis. We solve the housing crisis by doing common sense things to incentivize the building of new homes, right? We've done this in the past. Right after World War II, there was an enormous national program to incentivize the building of new homes, which was massively successful and created the suburb as a concept.
And it did it because, like you say, we also at the same time created the infrastructure to reach the suburb.
Yes.
So we had created the interstate system at the same time as we created the suburb because those people needed to work somewhere. They needed to get places.
Yep.
They needed to connect with other people. And we needed to do that in a way. And so we decided to do it with cars here because we have a big ass fucking country and they created the interstate system. And so that's why when you roll into Illinois, you never go faster than 20 miles an hour on any of the freeways because there's a fucking tangled knot of them around Chicago. It's around Chicago and there's this giant tangled knot of freeways. The other thing I want to mention too is, the infrastructure thing. We're talking about this on the other show I do. There's this grant that went out that was talking about how they were going to try to get a bunch of internet in a bunch of people's homes. So the plan was to get a bunch of internet across the country in all these different homes, and they had put a bunch of money toward it. And then now they're shitting on this because they're saying, well, it didn't even get any internet in any homes. You spent all this money and you didn't do anything. And you're like, yeah, that's because the places that they were trying to do it, you had to get permits, you had to dig, you had to do all this other pre-work in order to even start to get the lines out there to try to get the internet to those places. You have to do a bunch of work ahead of time. Think about if you sell off this land, you still have to do all that work to do all that stuff too. So you're years behind to even just try to hook it up if you were thinking of putting a house there. And you're not going to put a house there. Like you say, they're going to get that fucking logger guy who speaks a dialect you've never heard in your life, who fucking floats logs down a river after he cuts them down with his tree. He's like a living god beaver. And he has cut down all these trees and you can't understand a word he said. And then he's going to stack them up and you're going to live on a fucking what essentially is a burnt match. That's what's going to be left of these public lands. These public lands, we don't have a lot of these places left in the United States. I mean, do we have a lot? Do we have big swaths of them? Yes, but we don't have a ton of these places that are like untouched. We touch a lot of shit, and you've got to. There's plenty of money out there that they could do this somewhere else. The thing is that it's easy money for the politicians to make, and it helps their friends. That's the real key, is that it's helping their friends make a lot of money. And that's why they want to do it. They don't give a fuck about you. They're not trying to lower your tax bill. They're trying to sell this to their buddy because their buddy can make fucking a mint off of this land and then turn it into a fucking giant tar pile that we now have to deal with.
Yeah. And these lands that are the federal lands that are subject to purchase through this potential bill, like they are often adjacent to national parks. They specifically like national parks are excluded from here.
Sure.
But these are lands that are adjacent to those national parks, right? And so if you, let's say, literally strip mine something adjacent to a national park, you will pollute downstream all of that shit. If you throw coal mines in there, if you start looking for rare earth, if you start like digging for oil, removing shale, logging, all of this stuff has massive impacts, and those impacts are never confined only to the lands that they're done on. Of course, they spread. Yeah. They spread. It makes me crazy as somebody in the housing sector for my day job who spent his entire adult life in this business. It makes me crazy when they make suggestions like, oh, this is how we fix our housing crisis, when we already know that a lot of the housing crisis has to do with like refining our zoning laws. You could fix so much of this by changing zoning laws. You could fix so much of the housing crisis by creating federal incentives for building certain types of housing. There are common sense solutions to fixing the housing crisis, but they don't generate enormous amounts of revenue for big business. And that's why we don't do them.
Yep.
Make no mistake about this. If they generated enormous profits for big business, they would already be being done.
Yeah. If they generated enormous profits for big business, then it'd be selling public lands to private interests. That's right. And that's how you do it.
Yeah.
Maybe instead of blaming others for your problems, you should consider looking at yourself.
This story is fucking crazy. It makes you feel like you're being gaslit by the world when you read this. It's from The Guardian. Republican representative's ectopic pregnancy clashes with Florida abortion law. Kate Kamek blames the left's fear-mongering after medical staff hesitated to give her drugs needed to end her pregnancy. So this is a Florida Republican congresswoman, and she is blaming the left for the hospital being reluctant to treat her to remove her ectopic pregnancy. An ectopic pregnancy is a pregnancy that where the implantation occurs somewhere outside of the uterus, right? So that is an ectopic pregnancy. They are never successful. They cannot be successful. They are often dangerous. So these cannot resolve in a child being born. It is not possible for an ectopic pregnancy to resolve with a child being born. They resolve with either a miscarriage or a removal of that ectopic pregnancy, like through some kind of a medical intervention. Those are your, generally speaking, those are your options. She went to the hospital and the hospital was like, there's a lot of questions about how this is going to, I'm not eating shit for this. As a doctor, I'm not eating shit for this. And she's incensed and she's blaming the left for her poor medical care. And it's like, 9 months ago, 12 months ago, 2 years ago, whatever it was, I forgot how long was the Dobbs decision, 2+ years ago. 2+ years ago, you would have gone to the hospital and you would have just gotten care. You cannot blame the left.
Yeah. Well, and what I wonder is if they needed her to go to the emergency room to get the leopard off her face before they treated her. I wonder if they had to do that. Like,
man, we can't treat you until the leopard's fully removed.
You see, you have multiple problems wrong with you. We've got to triage the most important, which is the leopard that is attached to your face, lady.
Jesus Christ.
What I think is so interesting about this article, and you can read it, but she says it's their fault because they're fear-mongering and they're scaring this hospital because the hospital won't do it because they think they're performing an abortion. But really, they're just giving me medical care. And you're like, well, what are they doing, though? Like, what are they doing? What exactly are they doing to your body that is the medical care? What would you say is going to happen to your body that would be what we would call the medical care for this particular procedure? What is the outcome? What is another word for that? What is something that you're prosecuting people for? You're making it seem like these doctors are afraid and they're worried because they're playing semantics. No, they're worried because you didn't enshrine in law this very particular thing that happens to people, and they have to not only suffer the difficulty of losing a pregnancy, but now they have to suffer the difficulty of trying to figure out how the fuck to get it done in your backwards ass state.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, like when doctors have to consult with their lawyers before they are comfortable proceeding with giving you medical care, you've created a bad system. Yeah. Like, you made this happen. You could have just not done this. That was the option. Like, you could have just not done this. And like, you're exactly right. There is a distinction that is always false. But if you make a distinction between abortion and medical care, you're lying.
Yep. You're 100% lying.
You're just, what you've done is you've lied, and everything you say after that is a lie. Everything you say is suspect. Like, you cannot be trusted as a narrator of true things, right? Because you are drawing a false distinction. Abortion's just medical care. It's just medical care. What they want to do is they want to, and they don't say this because there's no way to actually police it, right? What they want to do is they want to police the reasons so that only the right people under the right circumstances get the right abortions.
Yep.
And what they mean by that is wealthy white ladies get to have their abortions, right? And everybody else, wealthy white ladies of a certain age, I should say, and everybody else can go eat shit.
Yep.
That's what they really want. They won't say it, right? They'll couch it in all kinds of bullshit and lies. But at the end, if that's the result that you've worked really hard to achieve, that's what you wanted.
Yeah.
That's what you were building.
That's what you wanted. And I wish that everybody in the state turned her away. I
Yeah, I do
wish
too.
everybody in the state said, sorry, there's no room at the inn tonight. I apologize. Move on. Get on your fucking donkey, Mary, and ride to the next fucking barn and go try to have your ectopic pregnancy there, because we're not doing it. And then you go to the next one and they're not doing it either because you signed your fucking name to this. Well, guess what? Fucking deal with the consequences, just like everybody else you're forcing to deal with those consequences.
Yeah, Cecil, I hope, genuinely, and like I'm comfortable saying it, I hope that at some point it is a Republican power broker who dies from these things. Because already the poor are dying.
Yeah.
Right? Already the disempowered are dying. What we need in order to have change is we need the powerful to die. What needs to happen is somebody like this needs to go septic and die. Yeah. Somebody like this needs to bleed out at a fucking, in their car because the ER turned them away. Not just go to another state because you're wealthy, but they need to, what needs to happen in order for people to realize oh shit, that could have been me, is for the wealthy white people to die.
Yeah.
When the wealthy white people never die, then it's never, oh shit, that could have been me, because they don't see themselves in the people they victimize.
Yeah. And they need to die while the doctors are conferring with their lawyers, also the leopards, by the way, conferring with them to make this decision. Because you know what? That's what you did. You did this. You created this structure. You're the one who sat in that big room and said, this isn't a problem until it happened to me.
Yep.
And now it's a fucking problem. Well, you didn't step outside yourself for a second to understand that this is a real issue that women have to deal with, and that abortion is medical care, that this is medical care for people. And when you split the hairs, you should have to deal with those consequences.
It's closed. Actually, I did my own research online, and this whole thing has the classic earmarks of a false capture the flag propaganda op. Yeah.
This story comes from SciPost. Conspiracy believers tend to overrate their cognitive abilities and think most others agree with them. Cecil, I was really actually surprised by this. I genuinely believed, the first half doesn't surprise me at all. Conspiracy believers tend to overrate their cognitive abilities.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me because I think everybody overrates their cognitive abilities, right? I think most people think, myself included, that we're smarter than we are, right? We all think we know how averages work, and yet we all think we're above average, right? Yeah. So, but the part where they think that others think the same thing, I genuinely was surprised by this. I really thought that part of the draw of the conspiracy theory was being part of a small group that knew, right? I really thought that was part of the draw. I didn't understand that for most conspiracy believers, they think they are living in a world where most people also think the earth is flat.
Yeah.
Right? Or that most people also think Bigfoot is real, or that most people also think of chemtrails, or, whatever it is.
Well, and what it shows me is why this stuff is so wildly popular online. Why these people connect so quickly with everyone else, because they find each other and they do all believe this stuff. And then they're in this idiot circle pumping each other up constantly because they're constantly surrounded in this small group of all these people. And now they think everybody thinks like this.
Right.
And that to me shows me why this stuff. And it also shows me why this stuff continues to get popular and why it keeps growing, why we keep on finding the Ian Carrolls of the world who are shitting out conspiracy talk on their TikTok. Why those people keep getting famous is because they think it's real. Their confidence draws other people in, and then people aren't media literate anymore, and then they buy it, and then they think they're right too. And we have this cycle now of people who are not media literate, can't pick people out. We have a president of the United States who gets conned every third day.
Yeah.
So how if that's the most important person in your country and you see people use a total mark to the rest of the world, what does that say to all the rest of us? It's a matter of time before most people in the United States are absolutely marks. They're just people who can't critically think for themselves. And Dunning-Kruger continues to make that a true statement because they keep overestimating their ability to think. I know you said this, but I don't think I'm a smart guy. I admit it. I'm like, I'm not a super smart guy. The one thing I do is I question myself constantly. And that's important to do. Stop being so pretentious. Stop thinking you're so fucking right and think about something and be like, what are other avenues I could think about this same fucking thing? How can I approach it differently? Stop fucking thinking you're right about things, man.
Yeah, I'm going to get on my hobby horse and I'll get off of it quickly. But like this also highlights very much, and you were getting at this too, the danger of online communities. Yeah. Online communities, we select the online communities we want to be in because they appeal to us, right? So we are going to places that appeal to us, and then we're seeking out, and algorithmically being fed more information and more people who are always in agreement with us, who are always like, yeah, that's right. That's how the world works. We've talked about it in relation to the incel community. The incel community can only flourish online because it's so bizarre and so insane that when you take it offline, it cannot flourish, but it flourishes online. The same is true of conspiracy. The same is true of all bad thinking. Like all bad thinking will self-reinforce when we choose our places specifically because we like to be there.
Yeah.
When the places that we go to spend our time means that we are always surrounded by things that feel good to us, right? Then we are always it doesn't. Here's a great example. Jeeps are objectively bad cars, right? They consistently, by Consumer Reports, get rated as one of the least reliable car brands that you can buy. They are in the bottom. For years, they've been at the bottom. But there are massive online communities of Jeep people who love Jeeps. And if I go to those communities, I am not going to find a lot of references to the latest Consumer Reports showing how often they break. What I'm going to find is a community that tells me how great Jeeps are, right? And that's meaningless because there's no ramifications. There's not like, I bought a car that breaks and I just pay for the repairs and maybe that's fine with me. But like, we do that same exact thing, right? If you think about that same concept in places that do matter.
We did that with the president. We did that with the president.
We did that with the president, man.
It breaks all the time. And we still bought it.
We still bought it, man.
We still fucking bought it. It's on fucking, we put it on layaway for 4 years.
Yeah.
And then we came back to buy it.
We do this shit constantly when we go and we seek out places that only agree with us. We shouldn't find information specifically. We should avoid finding information. We should actively work not to see things that agree with us as our primary method of knowing about the world.
We covered Dunning-Kruger on one of the Rogan's as a skeptical toolbox. We covered Dunning-Kruger when we were talking about RFK, because RFK thinks he can read these big medical studies about autism and vaccines, et cetera, and come to a conclusion that other people haven't, right? So he sees this stuff and he thinks, I'm smarter. He's smarter than the average bear, right?
Right.
And he's been saying that for a long time. And then he put that bear on a bicycle after he, but he's smart. He thinks he's smart. So he's one of these guys, and this isn't normal phenomenon. This is something that you get to interact with all the time. Think of how many people you've seen online say, I've done my research. I've done my research. When what they've done is they Googled something and Google posted something. They scrolled past all the things that they disagreed with, and then they found the thing they agree with, and they said, yeah, that's the research I was looking to do. That's what I was looking to find, confirm my biases. Google helped me do that. I did a few moments of scrolling and 3 minutes of reading, and now I am just as qualified to talk about this particular thing as anybody else out there.
Man.
And this really complicated thing about vaccines or something else, they are, and think about how frequent that is, how frequent you run into that, how often you run into people who will laugh at you and say, what, you got a shot? You got the shot? Oh my God, you're going to die next year.
Yeah. Well, and I think that we tend to forget. I'll raise my hand. I tend to forget that Google is just as algorithmically feeding me as Facebook or TikTok or Instagram or Blue Sky or X. Google is algorithmically feeding you based on what you've clicked on, based on what you've asked, based on what you interact with. So like, it's not like I Googled it and like, that's how I know that this is a true thing. That's not a good way to know either. That's a bad way to know things. We are all susceptible to cognitive biases. No one is immune to propaganda. All of us are susceptible. You are not the exception. We have to get that. That was the big takeaway for me from this article, was that these conspiracy believers believe that they are among the majority of us.
Yeah.
And like, I thought to myself, well, I think I'm among the majority, right? I am also susceptible.
Yeah.
I am also like probably wrong about important things.
Yeah.
That's got to be true. There's no way that's not true, because there are a lot of people who are smart and that I respect that disagree with me. So I'm sure I'm wrong about important things.
Yeah.
And like, my job is to try to reduce that as much as possible.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for a couple of weeks. Now, we are going to be back. And like I say, we're going to have shows that are, that we think have good, the value in them isn't based on time, right? You're not going to hear a breaking news report from us for a couple weeks. We won't be talking about anything. And if there's a world when we come back in a couple weeks, we'll be back and we'll be going. But all the same stuff should be sent out. The only thing we're going to do is we're going to skip a funny show and move it back a week. What we would normally do is we would do a funny show first week in July on that Thursday. Instead, we're going to move that back to like the third week in July. And what we're going to do is have the second week will be a long form, and then we'll move that other one back. So it's just going to get shifted back is all. That's all that's going to happen. But you'll get all the same shows we'll be producing. We're going to have like I say, an interview with Michael Marshall, a couple of long forms that are coming your way. Should be some great content coming your way. So give it a listen, and we'll be back with a fresh show, we promise, in the middle of July. But we're going to leave it like we always do with the Skeptic's Creed.
Credulity is not a virtue. It's fortune cookie cutter, mommy.